The ship was dying. Wu knew at the moment the lights turned red and the alarm started screaming. He had been traveling through deep space for 3 weeks, looking for old ships to salvage and sell for parts. It was honest work, even if it was lonely. But now his hyperdrive was broken, and his small vessel was falling toward an unknown planet. He grabbed the controls and tried to steady the ship. Through the window, he could see a world covered in silver clouds and tall mountains. It was beautiful, but he had no time to admire it. The ground was coming fast. Come on, he whispered to himself. He pulled every lever and pushed every button he knew. The ship responded slowly, like a tired animal. He managed to angle the nose up just before impact. The crash was violent. Metal screamed against rock. Wu was thrown forward, and then everything went black. When he opened his eyes, the first thing he saw was the barrel of a weapon pointed at his face. The creature holding the weapon was tall, very tall, at least 8 feet, with silver skin that seemed to glow faintly in the dim light. Its eyes were gold, and they looked at Wu with a mixture of curiosity and disgust. "What are you?" the creature asked. Its voice was deep and smooth. Wu raised his hand slowly. "Human," he said. "I'm human, my ship crashed, I mean no harm." The creature made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Human, the soft ones from the distant sector, what are you doing so far from your little world?" Before Wu could answer, more of them appeared. They were all tall and silver, wearing armor that looked like it was made from liquid metal. They grabbed him roughly and pulled him from the wreckage of his ship. "A spy," one of them said. "Must be a spy." "I'm not a spy," Wu said, but they did not listen. They put heavy chains on his wrists and dragged him across rocky ground toward a large building in the distance. As they walked, Wu looked around carefully. He saw vehicles that floated above the ground. He saw weapons that hummed with energy. Everything here was advanced, far beyond anything he had seen before. But he also noticed something else. One of the floating vehicles had stopped working. Soldiers stood around it, looking confused. They kicked it and hit it with their hands, but they did not try to open it up and fix it. They simply called for a replacement. Interesting, Wu thought. They threw him into a cell made of energy bars instead of metal. The floor was cold, and there was no bed, just a hard surface to sit on. Wu sat down and waited. He was scared, but he did not show it. In his life, he had learned that showing fear only made things worse. Hours passed. Sometimes guards walked by and looked at him like he was an animal in a cage. They whispered to each other and pointed. Wu ignored them. He thought about his situation. He was alone on an alien world, surrounded by beings who were bigger, stronger, and more advanced than him. His ship was destroyed. He had no way to call for help, and even if he could, no one would come. Humans were not important in this part of the galaxy. Most species considered them primitive, barely worth noticing. But Wu had survived difficult situations before. He had grown up poor on a mining colony, fixing broken machines for food. He had learned that everything could be repaired if you understood how it worked, and he had learned that sometimes the thing to do was wait and watch. So he waited and he watched. The next day, an officer came to his cell. This one was different from the soldiers. She wore finer armor and carried herself with authority. Her name, he would later learn, was Captain Me. "The human," she said, looking at him with narrow eyes. "You claim your ship crashed by accident." "It did," Wu said. "My hyperdrive failed. I was just passing through." "No one just passes through space," she said. "This is the heart of the Empire. You would have to be very lost or very stupid to end up here." "Maybe both," Wu admitted. Me studied him for a long moment. There was no warmth in her eyes, but there was something else. Curiosity, perhaps. "What do you do, human? What is your purpose?" "I fix things," Wu said. "Machines, ships, equipment. If it's broken, I repair it." Me made a small sound of disbelief. "You repair things? Technology is far beyond anything your species has created. What could you possibly understand about our machines? Wu shrugged. A machine is a machine. Power source, circuits, moving parts. The principles are the same everywhere, only the details change. Before me could respond, another soldier rushed in and whispered something in her ear. Her golden eyes widened slightly. She looked at Wu with new interest. "It seems word of you has reached the capital," she said. "The Queen herself wants to see you." The Queen? Wu felt his heart beat faster. Why would a queen want to see me? "I do not know," Mi said. "But when Queen calls, everyone answers. Prepare yourself, human. You are going to the floating palace." They took him from the cell and put him on a transport ship. As they rose into the sky, Wu saw the planet spread out below him. It was harsh and beautiful, full of sharp mountains and deep valleys. They had built their cities on the peaks, towers of silver and gold reaching toward the stars. And above everything else, floating in the clouds like a dream, was the palace. It was enormous, a fortress of gleaming metal that hung in the air without any visible support. Wu had never seen anything like it. "Beautiful, is it not?" Mi said, watching him. "The seat of the empire. For 10,000 years our queens have ruled from that palace, and now you, a small creature from a primitive world, will walk its halls." "Lucky me," Wu said quietly. Mi almost smiled, almost. "We shall see, human, we shall see." The transport docked at the palace, and soldiers led Wu through corridors of polished stone and metal. Everywhere he looked, there were wonders. Floating lights that followed them as they walked. Walls that displayed moving images of stars and battles. Statues of warriors twice the size of themselves. But Wu kept his eyes forward. He knew that whatever waited for him at the end of this walk would determine if he lived or died. He thought of his mother, who had always told him to stay calm when things got bad. He thought of his father, who had taught him that every problem had a solution. He did not know what the Queen wanted with him, but he would face her with his head held high. That was the human way. The doors ahead of him began to open, and golden light spilled out. His new life was about to begin. The throne room was the largest space Wu had ever seen. The ceiling was so high it disappeared into shadow. Great pillars of crystal lined the walls, each one filled with swirling light. Hundreds of stood on either side of a long walkway, all of them dressed in fine clothes and armor. They watched Wu with cold eyes as soldiers pushed him forward. At the end of the room, on a throne made of what looked like frozen starlight, sat the Queen. Queen was magnificent. She was taller than the other, nearly 9 feet, with silver skin that seemed to shine from within. Her hair was long and white, flowing down her back like a waterfall of snow. Her eyes were gold, but brighter than any he had seen before, like twin suns burning in her face. She wore a simple crown of black metal, and even sitting still, she radiated power. Wu had seen many things in his travels. He had faced pirates and criminals and the cold emptiness of space. But standing before this queen, he felt truly small for the first time in his life. The soldiers forced him to his knees. "So this is the human," Queen said. Her voice was low and clear, carrying easily through the massive room. "I expected something more impressive." Laughter rippled through the court. Wu said nothing. A woman standing near the throne stepped forward. She was shorter than the Queen, but dressed in elaborate robes covered in golden symbols. This was Lady, the royal advisor. "Your Majesty," Lady said, "the creature claims to be a repairer of machines, a mechanic as they call it." She spoke the word like it was something dirty. "A mechanic," the Queen repeated. "And why should I care about a primitive mechanic?" "Because, my Queen," Lady said with a thin smile, "our own engineers have failed you. Perhaps we should let the animal try." The room went silent. Wu looked up and saw something strange in the Queen's eyes. Was it anger? No, something else. Worry. Queen stood from her throne. "Bring it out," she commanded. 2 servants hurried forward, carrying something heavy between them. They set it down on a platform in the center of the room, and Wu's breath caught in his throat. It was armor, but not like the armor the soldiers wore. This was something ancient and beautiful, a suit of war gear that seemed to be made from the same material as the stars themselves. It was black as night but covered in lines of gold that pulsed with faint light. Even damaged, it was the most amazing thing Wu had ever seen. The sacred armor of queens, Lady explained. Worn by every ruler of the empire for 10,000 years, it makes the wearer nearly invincible in battle. With it, our queen has never lost a fight. But now it is broken, Queen said. She walked down from her throne and stood beside the armor, running her fingers along a large crack in the chest plate. An assassin attacked me 3 days ago. A bomb. The armor saved my life, but its energy core was damaged. The self-repair systems have failed. Our engineers have tried everything, General Dong said. He was a massive with scars on his face and anger in his voice. The core is cracked. The energy patterns are disrupted. They say it cannot be fixed. We would need to forge new armor, but that would take months. And we do not have months, the Queen said. The Empire is preparing to attack. Without my armor, our chances of victory are greatly reduced. Wu understood now. The Queen was desperate. She had heard about the human who claimed to fix things, and she was willing to try anything. Lady turned to Wu with a mocking smile. So, little creature, you say you can repair anything. Can you repair this? If he fails, execute him, General Dong added. We have no use for false hope. All eyes turned to Wu. He stood slowly, ignoring the soldiers who moved to stop him. He walked toward the armor, feeling the weight of hundreds of stares on his back. The armor was magnificent up close. He could see the damage now, the crack that ran through the chest plate and into the core chamber beneath. Energy leaked from it in soft pulses, like blood from a wound. The technology was far beyond anything humans had created, using principles Wu had never even imagined. But as he studied it, he began to see patterns. The energy flowed in certain ways. The circuits, strange as they were, followed logical paths. The core was damaged, yes, but it was still a machine. And machines, no matter how advanced, obeyed certain rules. Well, the Queen demanded, can you fix it or not? Wu looked at her. She was trying to appear calm and commanding, but he could see the tension in her shoulders, the worry hidden deep in her golden eyes. This armor was not just a weapon to her. It was a symbol, a connection to her ancestors, a part of her very identity. I can try, he said simply. General Dong snorted. You can try, that is not good enough. It is the best I can offer, Wu said. I have never seen technology like this. I do not know if it can be repaired, but I have fixed many things that others said were impossible. If you give me time and tools, I will do everything I can. The court erupted in angry voices. Nobles shouted that it was an insult to let a primitive touch the sacred armor. General Dong demanded Wu's execution. Only Lady remained silent, watching with her clever eyes. Queen raised her hand, and the room fell silent instantly. She walked toward Wu until she stood directly in front of him. She was so tall that he had to tilt his head back to look at her face. Up close, she was even more beautiful and terrifying than before. Do you understand what you are asking? She said quietly. This armor is sacred. Only the Queen and her chosen servants may touch it. If you fail, your death will be slow and painful. If you damage it further, your death will be even worse. Wu swallowed hard. I understand. And you still want to try. He thought about his options. He could refuse and probably be killed anyway. Or he could try and maybe, just maybe, survive. It was not much of a choice. Yes, he said, I still want to try. For a long moment the Queen stared at him. He could not read her expression. Then slowly she nodded. Very well, human, you have 5 days. Captain Mi will guard you. You will be given tools and materials, but know this. She leaned down until her face was close to his. If you betray my trust, there is no place in this universe where you can hide from me. I understand, Your Majesty, Wu said. She straightened and turned away. Take him to the workshop. Give him what he needs. As soldiers led him away, Wu looked back at the armor one more time. It seemed to pulse slightly, as if waiting. 5 days to fix 10,000 years of technology. He took a deep breath and began to plan. The workshop was cold and empty. Engineers had cleared everything out before Wu arrived, taking their advanced tools with them. They left him with only basic equipment, things they considered too simple for real work: welding torches, cutting tools, measuring devices. This is an insult, Captain Mi said, looking at the pile of primitive tools. How do they expect you to repair sacred armor with this garbage? Wu smiled slightly. This is exactly what I need. The armor stood in the center of the room, still beautiful despite its damage. Wu walked around it slowly, studying every detail. He touched the metal gently, feeling the faint hum of energy beneath the surface. He looked at the crack in the chest plate, the damaged core beneath. Do not touch it more than necessary, Mi warned. If you cause more damage. I know, Wu said, slow and painful death. You have told me many times. He pulled a chair over and sat down in front of the armor. For a long time he simply looked at it. Mi grew impatient. Are you going to do something? She asked. I am doing something, Wu replied. I am thinking. This was the human way, though they did not understand it. Humans were not the strongest species in the galaxy, nor the fastest, nor the most advanced. But they had one gift that others often lacked. They could look at something broken and imagine how to make it whole again. Wu thought about the energy patterns he had observed. He thought about the crack and how it disrupted the flow. He thought about the self-repair systems and why they had failed. Slowly, a picture formed in his mind. The next morning, he began to work. Engineers came to watch. They stood at the edges of the room, whispering to each other and shaking their heads. What they saw made no sense to them. Wu did not try to use their advanced technology. Instead, he went to his crashed ship and salvaged parts from the wreckage. He took copper wire and circuit boards. He took a small battery and some conductive tape. He took things that they would throw away as worthless junk. What is he doing? One engineer asked. Playing, another answered with contempt. The primitive is playing with toys. But Wu ignored them. He worked carefully, methodically. He opened panels on the armor that the engineers had never thought to open because they were not designed to be opened. He studied the internal systems with patient eyes. The energy core was indeed cracked. Energy leaked from it constantly, which was why the armor could not function. The solution would be to replace the entire core, but that was impossible. These cores could only be made using ancient techniques that took months to complete. Wu saw another way. The crack was like a wound. Energy leaked from it like blood from a cut. What if he could stop the bleeding? He used his salvaged materials to create a patch. Not a permanent repair, but a bridge that would redirect energy around the damaged area. It was crude compared to technology. It was ugly and imperfect, but it might work. On the second day, Lady visited the workshop. She watched Wu work for several minutes without speaking. Her face showed nothing. The court believes you will fail, she finally said. General Dong has already ordered the executioner to prepare. Wu did not look up from his work. Then the general will be disappointed. You are confident. Why? Our greatest minds could not repair this armor. Wu paused and looked at her. Your greatest minds think differently than I do. They look at broken things and see garbage. They throw them away and build new ones. Humans cannot afford to do that. We have always been poor and weak compared to the galaxy. We learned to fix things because we had no choice. Lady tilted her head, interested despite herself. You believe this is an advantage. Sometimes, Wu said. Your engineers look at this armor and see something sacred, something that should not be touched. I look at it and see a machine. A very beautiful, very complex machine, but still a machine. Machines can be understood. Machines can be fixed. He returned to his work. Lady watched for a while longer, then left without another word. On the third day, Queen herself came to the workshop. Everyone immediately fell to their knees, except Wu, who was deep inside a panel and did not notice her arrival. When Mi hissed at him, he bumped his head, pulling out, and quickly knelt. "Continue your work," the Queen said. "I wish to observe." Wu hesitated, then returned to what he was doing. He was connecting his crude bridge to the energy pathways, using techniques he had invented himself. His hands were steady despite the Queen's presence. "Explain what you are doing," she commanded. "The core is cracked," Wu said, not stopping his work. "Energy leaks from the crack. I cannot fix the crack, not with what I have, but I can redirect the energy around it, like a river flowing around a stone." "That is not how technology works," the Queen said. "No," Wu agreed, "but it is how human technology works. We adapt, we improvise, we find new paths when the old ones are blocked." The Queen was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. "You are strange, human. You are weak and small and primitive, yet you speak to me without fear. You work on my sacred armor as if it were a common machine. Either you are very brave or very foolish." "Probably both," Wu admitted. The Queen almost smiled, almost, then she turned and left. On the fourth day, Wu finished the bridge. He spent hours checking every connection, every pathway. He ran calculations in his head and on scraps of paper. He found errors and fixed them. He found weaknesses and strengthened them. On the fifth day, he was ready. The throne room was full again. Every noble, every engineer, every important person in the empire had come to watch. Most expected to see an execution. Some hoped for a miracle. All were curious. The armor stood on its platform. Wu stood beside it, his hands dirty with grease and his eyes tired from lack of sleep. Queen sat on her throne, watching with unreadable eyes. "The time has come," she said. "Show us what you have done, human." Wu took a deep breath. He had done everything he could. Either it would work or it would not. Either he would live or he would die. He pressed the activation switch. For a moment nothing happened. The crowd began to murmur. General Dong smiled coldly. Then the armor began to glow. Energy flowed through the channels Wu had built, around the damaged core, through the systems that had been dead for days. The golden lines on the black metal blazed with light. The armor hummed with power. The crowd fell silent. Wu checked the readings on his crude diagnostic tools. His eyes widened. "It is working," he said, "and the power output is 15% higher than before." "Impossible," an engineer whispered. Queen rose from her throne and walked toward her armor. She placed her hand on its chest, feeling the energy thrumming beneath the surface. For a long moment, she simply stood there, her eyes closed. When she opened them, she looked at Wu, really looked at him as if seeing him for the first time. "You have done what no could do," she said slowly. "You have healed what we thought was dead." Wu bowed his head. "I just fixed a machine, Your Majesty." The Queen stared at him for a long moment. Then she turned to her court. "This human has proven himself useful," she declared. "He will not be executed. He will remain in the palace as my guest until I decide what to do with him." The court erupted in confused whispers. Wu let out a breath he did not know he was holding. He had survived, for now. But as Lady watched him with calculating eyes, he had a feeling his troubles were just beginning. The celebration began immediately. Servants brought out food and drink. Musicians played strange, beautiful music. The court that had expected an execution now cheered for the impossible victory. Wu stood quietly in a corner, watching it all with tired eyes. He had not slept properly in 5 days. His body ached. His hands were sore from work. All he wanted was a soft bed and silence. Captain Mi brought him a cup of something warm. "You should celebrate," she said. You did something remarkable. I just want to rest, Wu admitted. Soon, Mi said. But first the Queen may wish to speak with you again. You should be ready. Before Wu could respond, a loud voice cut through the celebration. Wait! Everyone turned. Lady stood in the center of the room, her elaborate robes shimmering in the light. Her face was serious, almost worried. Your Majesty, she said, bowing to the Queen. Before we continue, there is a matter we must discuss, a matter of law. Queen frowned. What matter? Lady took a deep breath. The sacred armor of queens. It is not merely a weapon. It is a symbol of royal power passed down through generations. Its significance is deeply written in our oldest laws. I know my own history, advisor, the Queen said coldly. What is your point? My point, Majesty, is this, the law of the sacred bond. A murmur ran through the crowd. Some of the older nobles looked shocked, others confused. Many younger had never heard of this law. The law of the sacred bond, Lady continued, was written 8,000 years ago. It states that the Queen's battle armor is her second skin, her soul shell. It is the most intimate object in the empire, more personal than even the crown. She paused, looking at Wu. The law further states that whoever repairs the armor, whoever touches its inner workings and restores its life, becomes spiritually bonded to the Queen. In ancient times, this was how queens chose their royal consorts. Only one worthy enough to heal her soul shell was worthy of standing beside her as husband. The room exploded. Nobles shouted in anger and disbelief. General Dong's face turned dark with rage. Guards reached for their weapons without knowing what to do. The celebration had transformed into chaos in seconds. Wu stood frozen, his tired mind struggling to understand what he had just heard. Husband. What did she mean, husband? Queen raised her hand. Slowly, painfully, the room fell silent. Her face was like stone, showing nothing. You speak of a law that has not been used in thousands of years, she said to Lady. Many would say it is no longer valid. The law was never removed from our books, Lady replied. It is still binding. I have checked with the priests and the scholars. They agree. This is madness, General Dong stepped forward. You cannot be suggesting that this creature, becomes royal consort. It would be an insult to our entire bloodline, an abomination. I am not suggesting anything, Lady said calmly. I am simply stating the law. What Her Majesty chooses to do with it is her decision. All eyes turned to Queen. Wu finally found his voice. Your Majesty, I did not know about this law. I had no intention of. I would never presume to. Silence, the Queen said, not harshly but firmly. She was thinking he could see, calculating. She descended from her throne and walked toward Wu. The crowd parted before her like water before a ship. She stopped directly in front of him, looking down at his small, tired form. Tell me, human, she said quietly. Did you know about this law before you repaired my armor? No, Your Majesty. I only wanted to survive. And do you wish to be my husband? Wu's mouth went dry. I do not know how to answer that question. I am just a mechanic, a nobody. I am not worthy of standing beside a queen. That is not what I asked. Her golden eyes were intense. Do you wish it? Wu thought about his life. He had been alone for so long, traveling from star to star, fixing things for money, never belonging anywhere. He had never imagined something like this. He had never even imagined meeting an alien queen, let alone being bound to one by ancient law. I do not know you, he said honestly, and you do not know me. A marriage should be more than a law written 8,000 years ago. Something flickered in the Queen's eyes. Respect, surprise, he could not tell. She turned to face her court. The law is the law, she declared. Our civilization is built on laws. If we abandon them when they become inconvenient, we abandon everything we are. General Dong stepped forward. Your Majesty, surely there must be an exception. This human is not. He is not even civilized. He cannot be allowed to stand beside you as an equal." "The law says nothing about species," Lady observed quietly. "It speaks only of the one who repairs the armor." "Then we will change the law," Dong shouted. "Laws cannot be changed overnight," the queen said, "and I will not begin my reign by breaking the traditions of my ancestors." She took a deep breath. "The human will become my royal consort. That is my decision." The court erupted again, but the queen's voice cut through the noise like a blade. "However," she continued, "let no one mistake this for affection. The human is a political necessity, nothing more. He will have the title and the protection it provides, but he will have no power, no influence over my decisions. He is a symbol, not a partner." She turned back to Wu. Her face was cold, her voice hard. "Do not mistake this for kindness, human. I am doing this because I must, not because I want to. You will live in my palace. You will bear the title of consort, but you will never be my equal. You will never be my true husband. You will be a pet that I keep because the law demands it. Do you understand?" Wu looked into her golden eyes. He saw anger there and frustration, but beneath it all he saw something else. A woman trapped by rules she could not break, doing what she believed was right even though she hated it. "I understand, Your Majesty," he said quietly. "I will try not to be a burden." The queen stared at him for a moment longer, then she turned away. "Prepare the binding ceremony for tomorrow," she commanded, "and give the human a proper room. If he must be my consort, he should at least be presentable." She walked back to her throne and sat down, her face like a mask of ice. The court slowly dispersed, nobles whispering angrily among themselves. General Dong shot Wu a look of pure hatred before leaving. Lady watched everything with her clever, calculating eyes. Captain Mi appeared beside Wu. "Come," she said, "I will take you to your new chambers." "Me," Wu said quietly as they walked. "Why did Lady do that? She did not seem to like me. Why would she want me to become consort?" Mi was silent for a moment. Lady does nothing without a reason. Perhaps she sees value in having a consort who is not from a noble family, someone without connections or allies, someone who depends entirely on the queen for protection. "Someone easy to control," Wu said. "Yes," Mi admitted. "You should be careful, human. You have gained a powerful position, but you have also gained powerful enemies. Not everyone wishes to see you survive." Wu nodded slowly. He was no longer just a mechanic trying to stay alive. He was now a piece in a game he did not understand, played by people far more powerful than him. But he had survived so far. He would keep surviving. That was what humans did. Tomorrow, he would become the husband of a queen who hated him, surrounded by enemies who wanted him dead. He had faced worse odds before. Maybe the binding ceremony was simple and cold. There were no flowers, no music, no celebration. Queen stood in her restored armor while an ancient priest spoke words in a language Wu did not understand. At the end, a thin band of silver metal was placed on his wrist, marking him as royal consort. The queen did not look at him once during the entire ceremony. Afterward, servants led him to his new chambers in the royal wing of the palace. The rooms were beautiful, filled with soft furniture and amazing views of the clouds below, a far cry from his cramped ship or the cold prison cell. But the beauty felt empty, like a golden cage. Days passed, then weeks. Wu saw the queen rarely. When they did meet, she treated him with polite coldness, speaking only when necessary. She never called him by name. Always the consort or the human, he understood. He did not expect love or even friendship. He was a political symbol, nothing more. But even symbols have enemies. The first assassination attempt came on his 12th night in the palace. Wu woke to the sound of his door opening. A shadow moved in the darkness, holding something that gleamed like a knife. Most people would have screamed or frozen in fear. Wu did neither. He had lived too long in dangerous places to panic easily. Instead, he rolled off the bed and grabbed the lamp from his nightstand. As the assassin lunged at him, he smashed the lamp against the wall, exposing the electrical wires inside. In one quick motion, he touched the wires to the metal knife. The assassin screamed as electricity shot through their body. They collapsed to the floor, twitching and unconscious. Captain Mi burst in seconds later, weapon drawn. She found Wu standing over the fallen assassin, breathing hard but uninjured. "You killed them," she said, checking the body. The assassin was still alive but badly hurt. "Just shocked them," Wu said. "I wanted them alive for questioning." Mi looked at him with new eyes. "How did you know to do that?" "When you grow up on a mining colony, you learn to defend yourself," Wu said. "Electricity is a useful tool for fixing things and for fighting." The assassin was taken away for interrogation. They refused to reveal who had sent them, but everyone suspected it was one of the noble families who opposed the marriage. No punishment was given because no proof was found. But after that night, Mi stopped treating Wu like a burden she had to protect. She began treating him like someone worthy of respect. More attempts followed over the next months. Poison in his food, which he detected by its strange smell. A rigged door that would have crushed him if he had not noticed the unusual mechanism. A gift box containing a small explosive, which he carefully disarmed and handed over to the guards. Each time, Wu survived through cleverness rather than strength. Each time, the court whispered that perhaps the human was not as weak as they thought. Between these dangers, Wu spent his time learning about culture. He studied their language until he could speak it fluently. He read their history and their laws. He learned about their rigid hierarchies, their worship of strength, their belief that weakness was the greatest shame. And he learned about Queen. She had taken the throne at a young age, just 200 years old by standards, practically a child. Her mother had died in battle against the Empire and had been forced to lead her people through grief and war. She had never shown weakness, never allowed herself to be vulnerable. She had never taken a consort because no male had ever been deemed worthy. And now her consort was a small, soft alien who fixed things. The Queen began to summon Wu more often, though always for practical reasons. A communication device that had stopped working. An ancient family heirloom with a broken mechanism. A weapons system that needed adjustment. Each time, Wu fixed the problem quickly and efficiently. And each time, the Queen seemed to linger a little longer, asking questions, listening to his answers. One evening, while Wu repaired a beautiful music box that had belonged to her grandmother, the Queen asked him about Earth. "Tell me about your world," she said. "I have never met a human before you." Wu smiled slightly. "Earth is complicated. It has great oceans that cover most of its surface. It has forests so thick you can walk for days without seeing the sky. It has deserts and mountains and frozen lands at its poles." "It sounds primitive," the Queen said. "Perhaps," Wu admitted. "Compared to we have only been traveling through space for a few centuries. We are still learning." "Then how do your people survive? The galaxy is harsh. The weak are destroyed." Wu finished adjusting the music box and wound it up. A gentle melody began to play, soft and sweet. "We survive because we adapt," he said. "Humans are not the strongest species or the fastest but when things change, we change with them. When old ways stop working, we find new ways. When we fall down, we get back up." The Queen listened to the music, her face thoughtful. "Adaptation," she said slowly. "We do not adapt, we endure. We are strong enough to face any challenge without changing." "With respect, Your Majesty," Wu said carefully, "enduring is not the same as living. Sometimes change is necessary. Sometimes the old ways must give way to new ones." The Queen's golden eyes met his. For a moment he thought he had gone too far, said too much. But she did not seem angry. "You are a strange creature, human," she said quietly. You speak truths that my advisors would never dare to say. Perhaps because I have nothing to lose, Wu replied. Your advisors want to keep their positions. I just want to be useful. The queen was silent for a long moment. Then she stood. Thank you for repairing the music box, she said. It meant a great deal to my grandmother, and to me. She left without another word, but Wu noticed something different in her voice, something warmer. That night, Mi visited his chambers. You are playing a dangerous game, she said, speaking to the queen as if she were an equal. I am not playing any game, Wu said. I am just being honest. Honesty can be dangerous, especially in a palace full of lies. Wu looked out the window at the stars. Then perhaps this palace needs more honesty, he said. Mi shook her head, but there was a small smile on her face. You are a strange human, Wu, very strange. As the months passed, something slowly began to change. The queen started calling him by name instead of the consort. She asked his opinion on small matters, then larger ones. She shared meals with him, discussing everything from politics to philosophy. They were not friends exactly. The queen was too proud for friendship, but they were no longer strangers. And somewhere in the vast, cold palace, something that might have been warmth began to grow. Neither of them spoke of it. Neither of them acknowledged it. But it was there, like the first light of dawn before the sun rises. Of course, the darkness was coming too, but for now there was light. The alarm started screaming at midnight. Wu woke instantly, his heart racing. He had heard alarms before during drills and minor emergencies, but this was different. This sound was deeper, more urgent. This was the sound of real danger. Mi burst into his room seconds later. Get dressed, she commanded. They have attacked. Their fleet just dropped out of hyperspace near the outer defense stations. How bad? Wu asked, already pulling on clothes. Bad, over 300 ships. Our forces are heavily outnumbered. They moved through corridors filled with running soldiers and shouting officers. The palace was in chaos. Through the windows, Wu could see flashes of light in the distant sky, ships fighting and dying in the darkness of space. He found Queen in the war room, surrounded by generals and advisors. She was wearing her restored battle armor, the black metal gleaming under the harsh lights. Her face was calm, but Wu could see the tension in her shoulders. The outer stations have fallen, General Dong reported grimly. Their fleet is advancing toward the... We are mobilizing everything we have, but it is not enough, the Queen finished. No, Your Majesty, it is not. The Queen studied the holographic map showing the positions of both fleets. Red dots representing enemy ships were everywhere, moving steadily closer. Blue dots representing forces were pulling back, trying to form a defensive line. We have faced them before, she said. We have beaten them before. Never against numbers like these, Lady said quietly. They have been building their forces for years. They planned this attack carefully. The Queen's jaw tightened. Then we will fight carefully, and we will win. But even as she spoke, something changed. The lights flickered. The holographic map distorted, then went dark. All around the room, screens and displays began to fail. What is happening? The Queen demanded. An officer checked her instruments, her face going pale. Some kind of energy wave. It is disrupting all our technology. Ships, weapons, communications. Everything is shutting down. Through the window, Wu saw ships falling from the sky. Their engines had stopped. Their systems had died. They dropped like stones, crashing into the clouds below. The palace, someone shouted, the palace is losing power. The great floating fortress shuddered beneath their feet. Without its gravity engines, it could not stay in the air. They were falling. Alarms that had been screaming went silent as they lost power. Emergency lights flickered on, casting everything in dim red. The proud war room was suddenly filled with fear. A General Dong said, his voice hollow. They have built some kind of electromagnetic device. It disables everything in range. How do we stop it? The Queen asked. I do not know. Without our technology, we are helpless. For the first time since Wu had met her, Queen looked lost. She was a warrior, bred for battle, armed with the finest weapons in the galaxy. But without those weapons, without her technology, she was just a woman watching her world fall apart. The palace tilted sharply as it continued to drop. People grabbed walls and furniture to stay upright. Through the windows, the ground was coming closer. Wu's mind was racing. Electromagnetic disruption. It killed digital systems, advanced circuits, anything that relied on complex electronics. But what about simple systems? What about analog technology? What about things built without circuits? Your Majesty, he said, stepping forward, I might have an idea. Everyone looked at him, some with confusion, some with contempt. A human speaking up in a moment of crisis. Speak, the Queen commanded. This weapon kills your technology because your technology is too advanced, Wu explained quickly. Everything is digital, everything is connected, everything relies on the same type of systems. When those systems fail, everything fails. Tell us something we do not know, Dong snapped. But human technology is different, Wu continued, ignoring him. Where I come from, we still use simple systems as backups, mechanical switches instead of digital ones, chemical batteries instead of energy cores, analog controls instead of computer guidance. That is primitive nonsense, an engineer said. Such things would never work in modern combat. They would work right now, Wu said, because they cannot be disabled by this weapon. They do not use the same principles. The Queen stared at him. You are saying you can fix this? Not fix. That would take too long, but I might be able to bypass it. Get some systems working again. Maybe enough to save the palace. Maybe enough to fight back. How long? Wu looked at the tilting floor, felt the palace shaking as it fell. I need an hour, maybe less. We do not have an hour, Dong said. We will hit the ground in 20 minutes. Then I will work fast. The Queen made her decision instantly. Give him whatever he needs. Full access, full authority. If anyone interferes with him, I will personally execute them. Wu ran from the room, me close behind. The corridors were dark now, lit only by emergency chemical lights that had activated when the main power failed. People stumbled around in confusion and fear. What do you need? Me asked. My tools from my crashed ship, the things I used to repair the armor, and access to the palace's mechanical systems, not the digital ones, the physical ones, the backup controls that were installed for emergencies. I know where those are, follow me. They moved through the dying palace like ghosts. The floor tilted more with each passing minute. Objects slid and fell. Somewhere glass shattered. Me led him to a maintenance chamber deep in the palace core. Here, hidden behind the advanced systems, were the ancient backups that no one had used in centuries. Manual controls, physical switches, primitive technology that the considered beneath them. Wu went to work. His hands moved with speed born from years of practice. He connected wires and adjusted circuits. He bypassed the dead digital systems and routed power through the old mechanical ones. He used techniques that would have made engineers laugh, tricks that humans had developed on Earth generations ago. The palace shuddered again. They were running out of time. Wu Mi said urgently, hurry. Almost there, he muttered. Just one more connection. He touched two wires together. Sparks flew, and somewhere above them engines began to roar. The palace lurched, then steadied. They were still falling, but slower now. The emergency engines were fighting back. It is working, Mi breathed. But Wu was not done. He ran to another panel and began working again. I need to restore the armor. The Queen needs to be able to fight. Can you do that from here? The armor connects to the palace power grid. If I can create a clean channel, isolate it from the damaged systems. He worked as he talked, his fingers flying. There, that should do it. He pressed a final switch. In the war room above, Queen gasped as her armor suddenly hummed to life. Power flowed through it, clean and strong. The sacred armor of queens awakened once more. "The human did it," someone whispered. The queen's golden eyes blazed with renewed determination. "Prepare a shuttle. I am going to end this myself." "Your Majesty, no," Dong protested. "It is too dangerous. My people are dying, my world is burning, and I am the only one who can fight." She looked at her armor, glowing with power in the darkness. "The human has given me a weapon. Now I will use it." The shuttle launched minutes later, rising from the tilting palace toward the battle above. It was powered by the same primitive systems Wu had restored, mechanical engines and chemical fuel, things the weapon could not touch. And in that shuttle, wearing the only functioning armor in the entire empire, Queen flew toward the enemy flagship. She was one warrior against an army, but she was a queen, and she had something the enemy did not expect. She had human ingenuity on her side. The battle lasted 3 hours. Wu watched from the palace windows as Queen tore through the enemy fleet like a star falling through the darkness. Her armor blazed with golden light as she moved from ship to ship, unstoppable and terrifying. They had disabled every weapon in the system, but they had not prepared for one woman in ancient armor, powered by crude human engineering. She found the flagship carrying She crashed through its hull like a meteor. The broadcasts that reached the palace were broken and unclear, but they heard the sounds of fighting, explosions, and finally silence. Then the electromagnetic field collapsed. Across the star system, technology came back to life. Ships that had been floating dead powered up their engines. Weapons charged. Communications crackled with voices. And from the burning wreckage of the enemy flagship, Queen emerged, carrying the head of the commander in her hand. The battle turned after that. Ships that had been helpless now attacked with fury and vengeance. The fleet without there began to retreat. By dawn, the invasion was broken. The enemy survivors fled into hyperspace, leaving behind the wreckage of their defeat. The Empire had won. 3 days later, the victory celebration filled the throne room. Thousands of nobles and officers and citizens packed the great hall, cheering and singing. The war was over. Their queen had saved them. The empire would endure. But this time, the celebration was different. Queen stood before her throne, still wearing her armor, though the battle damage had been repaired. She looked out at her people with an expression Wu had never seen before. Pride, yes, but also something softer, something vulnerable. "My people," she said, and the room fell silent. "We have won a great victory, but we did not win it alone." She turned and gestured toward the side of the room. "Bring him forward." Wu was pushed gently by me. He walked toward the queen, feeling thousands of eyes on him. He was wearing clean clothes for once, proper garments that actually fit his small frame. But he still felt out of place among all these tall, silver beings. He stopped before the queen and bowed. "This human," Queen said to the crowd, "saved our world. When our technology failed, he found another way. When our engineers were helpless, he worked with his hands and his mind. When I needed a weapon, he gave me one." She looked down at Wu, and her golden eyes were warm. "Human ingenuity," she said. "I did not understand what that meant until 3 days ago. I thought your people were primitive and weak. I was wrong." A murmur ran through the crowd. General Dong stepped forward and raised his fist to his chest in a military salute. "The human Wu is a hero of the Empire," Dong declared. "I have opposed him since he arrived. I was wrong to do so. He has proven himself in the only way that matters, through his actions." More voices joined in agreement. Lady watched with her calculating eyes, but even she nodded slightly. Queen raised her hand for silence. "There is another matter," she said. As you know, Wu became my consort through the ancient law of the sacred bond. I accepted this law because I believed in our traditions, but I did not accept him, not truly. She descended from the throne and stood directly in front of Wu. Up close, she was as beautiful and terrifying as the first time he had seen her, but now there was something else in her face, something real. The law named him my husband, she said clearly. But today I choose him, not because tradition demands it, not because he saved my life and my world. I choose him because he is brave and clever and honest, because he sees things differently than we do, because he touched my armor and perhaps something deeper. She took Wu's hand in hers. Her skin was cool and smooth like polished silver. If he will have me, she added more quietly. Wu looked up at her. His heart was beating fast. A year ago, he had been a nobody, a salvage mechanic traveling alone through the stars. Now a queen was standing before him, offering him something he had never expected to find. I am still just a mechanic, he said. I fix things, that is all I know how to do. Then fix this empire with me, replied. Teach us to adapt, help us change. Wu thought about everything that had happened. The crash, the prison cell, the broken armor, the assassination attempts and the political games, the war and the battle and the impossible victory. He thought about me, who had become his friend. He thought about this strange, proud, beautiful queen who had slowly let him see behind her mask. Yes, he said, I will. The crowd erupted in cheers. The sound was deafening, overwhelming. Wu barely heard it. He was looking at the smile spreading across her face, the first true smile he had ever seen from her. Later, after the celebration had ended and the crowds had gone, they stood together on a balcony overlooking the stars. The planet below was healing from the invasion. Ships were being rebuilt. Life was returning to normal. You know, said quietly, you could return to Earth. I would give you a ship. I would not stop you. Wu looked at her. Do you want me to go? No, she admitted. But I want you to have the choice. You did not choose to come here. You did not choose to become my consort. If you stay, it should be because you want to, not because you have no other option. Wu thought about Earth. He had not been there in years. He had no family waiting for him, no friends, no real home. The mining colony where he grew up had been destroyed long ago. The stars had been his home since then. But now he had something else, someone else. I will stay, he said. Someone has to keep fixing things around here. Laughed. It was a real laugh, warm and surprised, as if she had forgotten how to make such a sound and had just remembered. You are a strange creature, Wu of Earth. So people keep telling me. She put her arm around his shoulders, pulling him close. He leaned against her, feeling the cool smoothness of her armor, the steady beat of her heart within. My advisors are already discussing trade agreements with your people, she said. Human technology is primitive, but they have seen what human thinking can accomplish. Many believe the Empire could benefit from closer relations with Earth. That will make some unhappy. Change always makes people unhappy, but change is necessary. You taught me that. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the stars. What happens now? Wu asked. Now we rebuild. We strengthen our defenses. We prepare for the future. Looked down at him. And we learn from each other. Endurance and human adaptability. Perhaps together we can be stronger than either of us alone. Wu smiled. I like that plan. Good, because you are going to help me implement it. You are my consort after all. You should do some actual work. I have been working. I fixed your palace. I fixed your armor. I fixed your entire defense system. Then keep fixing things. Her voice softened. Keep fixing me. Wu reached up and touched her face, tracing the smooth silver lines of her cheek. I think you were never broken, he said, just waiting for someone to see the real you. His golden eyes glistened. She bent down and pressed her forehead against his, a gesture of deep affection. Perhaps, she whispered, perhaps that is what love is, seeing someone truly and choosing them anyway. And in the vast, cold universe, a human mechanic and an alien queen held each other as the stars wheeled overhead. They were different in almost every way. Different species, different cultures, different worlds. But they had found something unexpected, something precious. Not just survival, not just adaptation. Belonging. The first human union in history had begun with a crashed ship and a broken armor. Where it would lead, no one could say. But as they stood together, watching the dawn break over a world they had saved, they knew one thing for certain. Whatever came next, they would face it together. And that was enough.